Here we are on the fourth of 6 elements, ready to talk about all the holy Eidolons in Aura Kingdom. And oh boy, was I surprised at what we see. I mean, there's not a ton of classes where people choose to play Holy Main as often as people play other elements on those classes. Duelist has a great Holy Nuke, Star Color melee mode is all Holy, and Warbow and Guitar can be played as Holy too. And, of course, you can play Holy on Holy Sword. Shocking, I know. But anyway, when it comes to Holy Eidolons, we have a ton of defensive and survivability supports. If you're still working on surviving one-shots, some of these might be pretty nice choices that you don't need to invest too much in. But for the most part, once you get to endgame gearing up, you will want to have top DPS support instead. So I've reviewed them all to give you some recommendations. As usual, I've got my handy little legend over here, and as we go I'll be pointing out the notable tokens, which, don't get too excited, there's not many for Holy. So without further ado, let's get started! Alessa. The thing about Alessa is that she is not terrible for Holy, but by picking her, you're kind of locking yourself out of some of the benefits of the other starter Eidolons. She doesn't have any specific buffs for you, but she does have some pretty okay debuffs with the received Holy damage debuff, and that means that she basically has the minimum needed function to say that she is a Holy Eidolon. So if you're looking for a cute unicorn to be stuck in your Eidolon palette, she's not terrible. Just once she's outclassed, having her as a starter doesn't bring you any benefit, like, say, Merrily with her move speed stars would. Abraxas. One of the main things that people around S level 1 seem to find, especially when they're doing like their dimensional halls, is that they miss a lot more. Abraxas is really nice because he's got a 20% accuracy boost that you can pop at any time you want. He doesn't need any kind of investment to be able to use that, so you can even just use it and swap out, but it's something to keep in mind if you're finding that you're missing a lot on bosses. Just swap in Abraxas, pop your 20% accuracy buff, and swap out to another Eidolon. He does have some Holy support hidden behind Starstones, but I wouldn't recommend investing him in per se, but he's also not really that hard to pick up either, because you can get him by doing Archaeology. Nalani. I hate to say it, but there's really not too much that's great about Nalani. She's got a little bit of healing and speed. Her received damage plus benefit from upgrades is pretty nice, and the accuracy buff from skill upgrades is actually for the party, which is quite rare, but she doesn't have anything specific for Holy she's bringing to the table, and quite frankly, if you're going to be upgrading her skills for an accuracy buff, you may as well be using Abraxas in that case. I think her design is really cool, especially if you're a fan of wings. She's sure got a lot of wings. Vayu. You're going to start to see this trend pretty quickly here, so I'll just get it out of the way. Very few Holy Eidolons are actually orientated around damage. Vayu does have Holy damage received on his Starstone effects, and it's kind of interesting that you can ride on him in dungeons with his combo skill to help move more quickly, but you're not doing much damage while you're in the combo mode, so... And this is something we're going to see over and over again in Holy Eidolons, because it seems like, for the most part, Holy Eidolons just tend to be more defensive or support-orientated than DPS-orientated. Kotonoha. I think the one difference between Kotonoha's support and the other Eidolon support is just how much support she brings. Kotonoha is a top-tier clutch healer, and not only that, she's got a very nice design if you're into that kind of thing. I guess the main complaint is that you can't see her tails, because, I mean, she's supposed to be a nine-tailed fox, and we don't get to see any of them, so, I mean, points off for false advertisement, but generally, as far as healing Eidolons go, Kotonoha is completely top tier. Even nowadays, I would say. The only thing is that newer healing Eidolons might have a little bit more damage support in their kit, so they'll outclass her that way, but she's easy to farm, and I 100% recommend bringing her with you into dungeons if you're still at the point where you're needing that healing and your own Nocturnal sub isn't enough. Serena. Serena is kind of like a mascot for Aura Kingdom. She appeared in a ton of the advertisements, and and whatnot in the promotional materials, especially earlier on in the game's life, but she's kind of an odd mix of defense and HP support, while the Starstone upgrades add the damage support. So it's a little bit hard to recommend actually going in and forwarding up all of her skills for that purpose when you're behind right off the bat, not having anything specifically in her main kit. I will note that the debuff Can't Be Healed can be pretty helpful against Vaughn in the S level 1 dungeon if you're struggling to beat him while he's healing up. So just keep in mind, if you're struggling with that, you could swap in Serena, activate the Can't Be Healed debuff, and then swap back to a better DPS Eidolon if you're just not quite able to take him down as he's healing up. Bealdor. Bealdor is the boss on the 20th floor of Sky Tower, so you'd figure that he'd be pretty nice, but I mean, he's nice looking, and that's about what he's got going for him. If you take a look at his kit, all he has in his base kit is a dot. The upgrade effects do add a holy damage received and a damage debuff for the enemy, as well as the enemy crit rate down, but I don't think it's really worth investing that many Starstones into an Eidolon that has 0 buffs in his base form. I mean, he's got 4 costumes though, and that's a lot of costumes. Do you like costumes for Eidolons? Astraea. And here we have another Eidolon that mostly focuses on reducing the amount of damage that you take in her base kit. She's only got 1 buff on her base skills before upgrade, and that's reduces damage taken. And while her upgrade effects do add holy damage received debuffs, as well as an accuracy debuff, again, I gotta say, it's just hard to recommend putting that much investment into an Eidolon that you're basically trying to change from defense support to offense support. It kind of feels like when they started adding the Starstone upgrades, they just started throwing holy debuffs onto all these defensive Eidolons because they realized there were very few offensive holy Eidolons. I will say, however, she's got a wedding dress costume, so if you really, really like her, I mean, she's pretty darn waifu. Amaterasu. I think what sets Amaterasu apart from some of the other defensive-focused Eidolons that we've had so far is that her entire kit is completely focused on support. So if you were looking to invest a little bit into a support Eidolon while you're still getting to the level where you're one-shotting everything, Amaterasu isn't a terrible choice. She's got a reflect damage and heal skill, and she's also got damage reduction and a dot. Her skill upgrades are 100% focused on support, so enemy crit rate down and received crit damage down. So, while she's not adding it all to your offense, she's at least 100% focused on your defense, and you can't really go wrong if that's what you're looking for, but you can't make her into an offensive Eidolon. She's a really good, full defense Eidolon. Alice. Finally, we have a free-to-play, offensive, holy Eidolon. She's got a damage plus buff, which is not terrible, though not amazing, as well as a flat defense debuff. She's also got a damage dealt debuff for enemies, so that helps a little bit with survivability. And then in her upgrade effects, she's got holy damage received. So, unfortunately, she still does have the holy damage buff locked behind Starstones, but at the very least, the rest of her kit is actually intended to help you with combat. Also, we have her first notable token, which is an 8% def reduction. She doesn't have absolutely everything you need in a DPS Holy Eidolon, but she is the best choice for a free-to-play player if you will need something that you can farm up right now in dungeons or with LP, and she isn't that hard to farm up. So if free-to-play is your requirement, this is your Eidolon. Muse. Muse is the final dungeon spawn Eidolon on our list here, and she's mostly a healing Eidolon. So, as I mentioned earlier, Kotonoha is top tier at healing, but Muse adds in that on her skill upgrades, she gets the holy damage received debuff. So, She's not as good for healing as Kotonoha, in my opinion, but if you want to have a little bit more of a split between healing and being a little bit of DPS support, you can upgrade her Star Stones. I just don't think it's really worth upgrading her Star Stones unless you're an Idol fan. She's got that off-color Hatsune Miku vibe going for her, so. Michaela. This is our first Eidolon on the list that doesn't spawn anywhere in-game, but she is available in the LP store, so technically I'm gonna go with still farmable. She's got a damage versus dark buff, which is a little bit unique and might be helpful around S level 1 as there are a lot of dark bosses in that range, but her debuffs are just evasion and speed percent. If you start upgrading her skills, she sure does add a whole lot of unusable buffs, and the holy damage that she gets is actually only just for herself. So I don't recommend her as an Eidolon for your main damage because she's not bringing any holy damage for you anywhere in her kit. And that's a shame because she's actually got a really nice outfit. I like the way that she looks quite a bit, so that's a shame. Venus. Now, technically Venus was just added to the new Temple of Eidolon solo mode, but she's not available to purchase with LP, and it's very hard to farm Eidolons that are only in the Temple of Eidolons. You might incidentally get a few key fragments now and then, but it is pretty hard to get them just from the Temple of Eidolons. Keeping that in mind, she's got a move speed buff and a damage 10% down debuff. If you want holy support, it's hidden behind the upgrade effects. That being said, her upgrade effects are pretty top tier if you're getting them. She's got the holy damage received, as well as the just damage received debuff. She's also got holy damage stars to start, as well as move speed stars, which are super comfortable. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that she's not a bad Eidolon, it's just that the majority of her actual DPS is going to be hidden behind the upgrade effects, so she's not very budget friendly. That being said, I absolutely adore her character design. The Ojo-sama vibes are perfect and her little pigeon pal is wonderful, and no notes there. Idun. Idun has some nice heal and debuff immunity going on, but it's only debuff immunity. It doesn't include immunity to damage while it's active. And just like Venus, she's available in the new Temple of Eidolon mode, but she's also available in Elite Sky Tower on, I believe, floor 50, and you're not going to get her very fast from either of those ones. As far as support Eidolons go, she does have some nice debuffs in her kit, the defense and damage debuffs, but if you start upgrading her skills, all you're getting is holy skill damage and accuracy for her, not for you. So while the immunity is nice, she isn't really adding anything to your damage at all, even if you upgrade all of her skills. Santa Alice. Just like regular Alice, she actually does have some received holy damage in her kit, and this time it's in her base kit, along with a buff of 10% damage up, but for the most part the upgrade effects from Starstones are only for herself, so she's not bad, and it's probably not correct to say that she's worse than the regular Alice, especially since she's got holy damage received debuff on her token as well, but you don't need to buff her stars, and if you're getting into the point where you're spending money on an Eidolon anyway, I've got a better recommendation for you coming up. Urd. Urd is a little bit like Muse in that she's got the lifesteal and a little bit of damage support, but not as much lifesteal or healing as Kotonoha. Now, I actually really like Urd because she's got the move speed stars as well as the all stats down 10% debuff token. So I find her to be a really comfortable choice for running between bosses in dungeons, with that lifesteal just being a little bit of sweetening on the cake if it's a complete clutch needed heal. And as one of the Norns, she's part of that sweet, sweet pen archive. Also, this is a secret, so if you've been watching this entire time, you get to learn my secret. I really like gears, and she has gears on her shoes, so I really like her. Top recommendation if you like gears. Summer Michaela. It's actually really funny that at this point we've still got just a few Eidolons that don't have skills upgradable. And Summer Michaela is one of them. But no worries about that, she has everything you need in her base kit, both the Holy Skill Damage Plus, and the Holy Damage Received debuff against enemies, as well as a Damage versus Holy Targets buff, just because. You do not need to invest any Starstones in her right now. However, I will note that in the future, when her Starstones are added, they add def reduction, but no more holy damage. Also, if you can get your hands on her token, it has a debuff that increases enemies' received crit damage by 30%. Putting that together, not only is she a relative budget option because you don't need to give her any Starstones right now, but she's also got the full summer damage kit right in her base skills. And on top of all of that, she doesn't 100% require her stars to be reshuffled. You might want to change over her damage stars into like crit damage stars if you're looking for absolute top tier and you're not at the crit damage cap for your class, but generally she's an extremely good, extremely budget option. A little bit of best of both worlds. Santa Muse. When it comes to lifesteal Eidolons, she has a special edge that is the detail damage buff that comes alongside of it, but her specific received holy damage debuff is hidden behind the Starstone upgrades. I wouldn't recommend building her up as a main DPS Eidolon just because if you're gonna be getting a rare cash Eidolon, you may as well get Summer Michaela and swap in a more healing focused Eidolon when the situation calls for it. Santa Amaterasu. The main feature of her kit is the debuff and damage immunity, which is a little bit better than Idun because it's got both parts of it, but also she's got holy damage received in her base kit, so you don't need to use Starstones for that. In fact, the Starstones buffs are mostly for herself, so you wouldn't even need to start using them to get the most out of her if you've got her. Also to note is that her immunity skill has a really fast cast. So, while it may not be as long as Persephone's, it might be easier to use in a clutch situation. With that in mind, I'd say she's a great Eidolon to have if you can get your hands on her, but she's not a top tier DPS Eidolon that's an absolute must-get. Raphael. It's not super common for the seasonal variants of Eidolons to be different elements, but for Raphael, he's one of the ones where it is. This time, looking at regular Raphael, he's kind of similar to Santa Muse in that he's got the lifesteal as well as the detail damage buff, but his holy damage received debuff is in his main kit. The Starstone upgrades are kinda not great. The flat damage decrease isn't going to be doing anything to increase how much damage you're dealing, and the received healing buff of 50% doesn't affect nocturnal type healing, only regular type healing. So unless you're playing Bard and healing everybody, you're not going to get any benefit out of that. All in all, I'd say he's just a slightly more budget version of Santa Muse, and given that I don't super recommend Santa Muse either, it's a take it or leave it kind of Eidolon. I think he's pretty cute. Xiaoqiao. You'll have to forgive my Chinese pronunciation. I don't have any experience in pronouncing things in Chinese at all, but Xiaoqiao is an adorable young lady. Look at all the details in her design. I just love it. It was a real pain to cut out. She's got holy skill crit damage in her base kit, as well as damage versus holy targets. And then on the debuff side, we have the really nice damage received increased debuff for enemies. The upgrade effects improve that damage received debuff, but the holy damage is for herself. It doesn't add anything to your holy damage. So she's actually got a lot of what makes a good holy DPS Eidolon, but I feel like the crit damage only for holy skills is a little bit questionable in terms of its value. She does have a notable token though with the defense minus 10%. Just keep in mind that it's quite challenging to get your hands on a brand new Eidolon token if that's what you're going for. You'll probably need to roll the Dragon Paragon and get it out of one of those lucky packs. Again, I just gotta say I absolutely adore all the details on her design, and even though she's not top tier, I kinda wish I could get my hands on her. Unfortunately, I haven't been very lucky. So, that's the Holy Eidolons we got right now, with the newest being fresh released in the last 2 weeks. To summarize, Summer Michaela has been the best since before Starstones existed, and even though her Starstones buffs are not out, she is still reigning champion of Holy. Xiaoqiao doesn't seem to be far behind, and she has the coveted damage received buff, though she does have less overall Holy buffs, and I must admit I do not have her to test her out. Santa Amaterasu is a really comfortable pick with a whopping 8-second stun as well as Holy buffs in her base kit, and Urd is my personal comfort choice for move speed stars and lifesteal skills, and she's got a great archive and all stats down my 10% token. Over in free-to-play land, we have Alessa as the only farmable Eidolon with Holy damage in her base kit, Amaterasu as a full-fledged defense support if you're struggling in dungeons, Kotonoha as your pocket bard replacement, Abraxas as a handy swap-in accuracy buff, and Alessa as a nice starter choice if you want to commit to Holy on day 1. With that being said, there are more Holy Eidolons on the horizon, and this time I'll take a peek at all of them instead of just one. And this isn't the order of the release on the Taiwan server, so it's subject to change, and so are the names, but... Kaguya Hime has some Holy damage received in her base kit, but she does need upgrades to top it out at 30%. Her other upgrades are for her personal damage. I don't think she'll be new meta on release, but I love her design too. They are really stepping up with these new ones. For Gaia, oh boy, I've got a lot to say. It looks like she's got good stars right off the bat. She's got the lovely percent damage received debuff that can be very powerful, with some specific Holy debuffs in the star upgrades, though those ones are for her. It's hard to understand her third buff skill, as it's something I haven't seen on any English-released Eidolons yet. But if I am understanding it correctly, it's a 2,000 point buff to all stats, a 5% buff on top of that to all stats, and a 10% buff to physical damage. She could be really, really good, but I just don't know what to make of that insane-sounding last skill just yet. I had some help with checking all of the Eidolons this time, and the person who was helping me wanted to point out that she has an archive with Gigas as well, which means she's a Gigas stan, just like the rest of the player base. Santa Andrea is another pretty lady, and she's got an immobilizing skill that gains Holy damage debuff from Starstones, a def percent debuff, and a party Holy skill buff that also adds damage to Holy targets on her third skill. I think she will probably outclass Summer Michaela on her release, but I'm not sure where Gaia fits into the picture there. And the last released Eidolon in Taiwan is Dorothy. She seems to be geared a little more towards defense with her stars, and the Holy damage buff on Starstones will only be for herself, but she has the Holy damage received debuff on her second skill upgrade, and her third skill has Holy damage and a cleanse. I'm not sure if it removes 4 debuffs from each party member, or if it removes 4 total from the party as a whole, but it sounds much more powerful than most cleanses in the game right now. And on that note, we are done with Holy Eidolons. I hope I was able to help you understand all of these wonderful Eidolons, but I regret to inform you that you may have missed something. As I mentioned earlier, I had some help this time from Plinko with prepping some graphics and research, and before I could stop him, he had already hidden a couple of tears in the PNGs. So, if you saw, you were free to go, but if not, I guess you gotta watch it again. Sorry, them's the rules. Anyway, thank you for watching, once or twice, and thanks to Plinko for the help with some of the research and assets. I'll catch you next time for the ice element. Only 2 more to go now.